Victorian fashion was not merely a matter of taste, it was a complex system of social signals, rigid constraints, and, more often than not, a direct threat to life. The feminine ideal of the time was the angel in the house, a fragile, pale, almost incorporeal creature, free of earthly needs and physical strength. To achieve this image, the fashion and beauty industry employed methods that today seem like refined torture. The corset, a cage of bone and steel. The corset was the foundation of the Victorian wardrobe. It was worn from early childhood, gradually training the body into a rigid shape. Organ deformation, the ideal was a wasp waist, sometimes as small as 40 to 45 centimeters in circumference. To achieve this, the corset was laced so tightly that the lower ribs were compressed inward, and the internal organs, the liver, stomach, and intestines, were literally displaced from their natural positions, pushed down into the pelvis or forced upward. Ladies fainting, this was not affectation. Because of the corset, lung capacity was reduced by almost half. A woman could not take a deep breath. Any excitement or brisk walking led to oxygen deprivation and loss of consciousness. Health consequences: constant corset wearing caused atrophy of the back muscles, a woman literally could not sit upright without support, digestive problems, and serious risks during pregnancy. And yet, appearing in public without a corset was considered the height of indecency. It was called loose morals, implying that the absence of a rigid frame on the body signaled the absence of a moral framework in the soul. Crinolines and bustles, architecture as a weapon. In the mid-19th century, crinolines came into fashion, enormous dome-shaped frames made of steel hoops that held skirts of incredible width. Crinoline mania. Skirts became so wide that two women could not pass each other in a narrow corridor, and boarding a carriage required an entire strategy. It was a status symbol. The enormous skirt literally forced those around the wearer to keep their distance, emphasizing the lady's untouchability. Deadly danger: the crinoline was extremely flammable. Women often didn't notice that the hem of their gigantic skirt had drifted into a fireplace or brushed against a candle. Due to the frame's construction and the layers of fabric, the dress ignited instantly, and removing it unaided was impossible. Historians record thousands of deaths from fire skirts. Strong gusts of wind could also literally knock a woman off her feet or push her from a pier into the water, where the heavy structure acted as an anchor, dragging her to the bottom. Bustles. Later, fashion shifted to bustles, special pads or frames that created an unnatural volume at the back. This changed a woman's gait to a mincing, bird-like shuffle, emphasizing her helplessness and dependence on men. The cult of pallor, beauty that poisoned. Unlike the modern obsession with tanned skin, Victorians had a near-panicked fear of the sun. A tan was the mark of a peasant woman working in the fields. Aristocratic paleness was expected to border on transparency. Deadly whiteness: to achieve alabaster skin, women used lead-based face powder. Lead slowly poisoned the body, causing paralysis, tumors, tooth decay, and skin inflammation. To conceal the skin damage caused by lead, women applied even more powder, creating a vicious cycle. The aesthetic of illness, tuberculosis, consumption, was considered a disease of romantics, and consumptive beauty was in fashion. Thin skin, a feverish gleam in the eyes, hollow cheeks, and bright lips became the standard. Those who were healthy imitated the symptoms. They dropped belladonna juice into their eyes to dilate their pupils to a mysterious brightness, which led to blindness, and drank vinegar to induce anemia and pallor. The Victorian beauty cabinet, a chemical arsenal. The Victorian cosmetics case was a genuine stockpile of chemical weapons. Arsenic for complexion. Newspapers advertised arsenic wafers, promising to clear skin of freckles and give it a radiant glow. Arsenic destroyed red blood cells, which did indeed produce pallor, but also caused thyroid damage, hair loss, and a slow death. Mercury. It was used in ointments to remove blemishes and treat skin conditions. Mercury caused brain damage, depression, and the famous Mad Hatter's disease. Hat makers used mercury when processing felt for top hats. Radioactive glow. Toward the end of the era, following the discovery of radium, it began to be added to powders and creams as a supposed source of vital energy. Until the horrifying effects of radiation became impossible to ignore. Scheele's green, the color that killed. One of the most fashionable colors of the era was a vivid, saturated emerald green, known as Scheele's green. The problem was that this pigment was produced using enormous quantities of arsenic. Killer dresses. A woman wearing such a dress was literally clothed in poison. On contact with skin and through perspiration, arsenic entered the body, causing ulcers and convulsions. But the owners weren't the only ones to suffer. Seamstresses who worked with the fabric died in agony, and at balls the heat caused arsenic particles to rise into the air, poisoning everyone present. Wallpaper and daily life. The same dye was used to paint wallpaper in children's nurseries, to color children's toys, and even to wrap candy. People died in their own bedrooms, not understanding that their own walls were killing them. Hair, the crown of womanhood. Hair was considered a woman's greatest adornment. Victorian women almost never cut it. Floor-length braids. The ideal hair was supposed to touch the floor. Combing and caring for it took hours. Since washing hair frequently was difficult, there were no shampoos as we know them. Harsh alkaline solutions were used instead. Hair was often greasy, and heavily scented with aromatic oils to mask the smell. Cut hair. When a woman's own hair wasn't sufficient for an elaborate hairstyle, chignons were used, often made from the hair of the deceased or of the poor who had sold their braids for next to nothing. Sometimes these hairpieces harbored insects. Conclusion. Victorian fashion is a story of how social norms can overpower the instinct for self-preservation. A woman was required to be a beautiful object, motionless and fragile. Every element of her clothing, from the corset to the arsenic-laced fabric, underscored her status as a creature not intended for labor or an active life. This aesthetic of the dying swan became one of the strangest and most cruel periods in the history of beauty, reminding us of the price people are willing to pay for the right to conform to the ideals of their time.